At our family dinner, my sister-in-law announced I owed them everything. Camille didn't raise her voice. She didn't have to. She tapped her wine glass with the back of a butter knife, waited until the last side conversation died, then aimed her smile at me across Evelyn Mercer's dining table. Northlight, the hotel contracts, that fancy design award, she said, all of it started with this family. Beside her, my ex-husband nodded. Reed was looking down, his thumb moving across his phone. A blue button reflected in his glasses. I saw the words, "Review and renew," before he tilted the screen toward his lap. Everyone thought he was agreeing with Camille. He was still trading on my business guarantee. My own phone vibrated against my thigh a second later. I pulled it from beneath my napkin and saw the lender's name, Bellwether House's account number, and a confirmation I had never authorized. Across the room, on Evelyn's sideboard, the cobalt glass bowl from my old house held 3 keys. One of them was mine. "Go ahead," Evelyn said. "Read your message. We can wait." That was the thing about Evelyn. She could make an ambush sound like good manners. I'm sure it can wait. I turned my phone face down. Reed finally looked at me. There was a tiny lift at one corner of his mouth, the expression he used to wear when he had taken care of something tedious for both of us. Car registration, HVAC maintenance, a dinner reservation I hadn't wanted. He slipped his phone into his jacket. Camille was still holding her wine glass. "I'm not attacking you, Nora. I'd hate to see what glassware you use when you are." Her husband, Paul, covered a laugh with a cough. Camille cut him a look, and he became fascinated by his potatoes. The table had been set as if a lifestyle photographer might arrive. Linen napkins, taper candles. Evelyn's white china with the thin gold rim. She had cooked pot roast, which meant she wanted something. When she was genuinely feeding people, she made lasagna in a chipped blue pan and left the serving spoon in the dish. Pot roast meant polished silver and leverage. I had accepted the invitation because Camille called it a closing dinner. Her exact words were, "One calm meal, and we can finally untangle the last Bellwether stuff like adults." 8 months after the divorce, the last Bellwether stuff had become a category large enough to need its own filing cabinet. Camille lowered her glass. "What I'm saying is, I'm tired of hearing that our family somehow took advantage of you." "I haven't said that to you. You said it in the settlement." My attorney said Reed had 90 days to replace Northlight's guarantee. Reed leaned back. "Can we not turn dinner into a board meeting?" "You renewed the Harlow credit contract." His eyes met mine. He recovered quickly, but I had spent 9 years watching him decide which version of the truth would cost him least. "What?" "The message I just got. You renewed it." Evelyn set down her fork with great care. "Reed said that account was already handled." "It is," he said. "Then why did I get a confirmation?" "Because Northlight is still listed in the system. It's automatic. It asked you to review and renew." The silence around the table changed shape. Paul looked at Camille. Camille looked at Reed. Evelyn looked at me as though I had brought something unpleasant in on my shoes. Reed reached for his water. "The supplier needed continuity before the fall events. I renewed Bellwether's contract. That doesn't mean I renewed your guarantee. You can't renew one without rolling the other forward. You know that." "I know what you told me. I showed you the document. You showed me 30 pages of documents while we were dividing a house." My chair creaked when I leaned back. The guarantee was 1 page. "Here we go," Camille said. "No," I said. "Apparently here we continue." Evelyn pressed 2 fingers to the bridge of her nose. "Nora, Bellwether has honored every payment. Bellwether was late twice last quarter. 3 days is not late in the real world. It is at a bank. It's Harlow Commercial Credit," Reed said, "not a bank." That detail landed harder than he intended. He knew exactly which agreement he had renewed. Camille folded her napkin beside her plate. "Do you understand what happens if we lose that account? We have 12 events booked through November. The conservatory still needs climate panels, the kitchen needs the second refrigeration unit, and our regular vendors have already ordered against those dates. Then Bellwether needs its own credit. We're getting it. You've been getting it since January. You have no idea what financing looks like right now, she snapped. I run a company. Because we helped you get one. There it was again, cleaner this time. Camille leaned forward. Candlelight caught the diamond studs Evelyn had given her last Christmas. My mother introduced you to Tom Arlen. Tom introduced you to the Calder Hotel renovation. That contract put Northlight on the map. Reed spent years going to your site dinners and shaking hands with architects. Mom let you use the Bellwether loading dock before you could afford warehouse space. So forgive me if I think you owe us more than a technicality in a divorce agreement. Everything, Paul murmured. Camille ignored him. I looked at Reed. He studied the gravy pooled beside his potatoes. There had been a time when he would have reached under the table and put 2 fingers against my wrist. He did it at dinners where his mother asked when I planned to start dressing like a business owner, or when Camille joked that Northlight's first logo looked like a window cleaning service. 2 fingers meant, I know, I see it. Later, he would tell me they didn't mean anything by it. That signal had once felt like loyalty. Eventually, I understood it was a request for silence. Did you know she was going to say this? I asked him. Camille says what Camille says. That's a yes, Camille said. Helpful, he told her. Evelyn stood and began collecting plates, though Paul was still eating. We've spent enough of this evening itemizing old favors. She stacked my plate on top of Reed's. Her thumb rested in the gravy. I invited Nora because she remains family to me, she said. The sentence was aimed at the room, but the warning in it belonged to me. I glanced toward the sideboard again. The cobalt bowl sat beneath a framed photograph from Camille's wedding. I had made the bowl in Northlight's first rented shop, back when the kiln had a faulty relay, and every firing felt like a negotiation. The glass had slumped unevenly, one edge higher than the other. Reed loved it because keys couldn't hide beneath the lip. It had sat inside our front door for 7 years. When I moved out, I had left it cracked in a box marked Nora Studio. Where did you get that? I asked. Evelyn followed my gaze. The bowl? Yes. It was in the house. It was in my box. I thought you'd thrown it away. There was tape across the top with my name on it. She carried the plates toward the kitchen. Then Reed must have brought it by accidentally. Reed rubbed his jaw. I don't remember. One of the 3 keys had a rectangular brass head and a shallow notch near the shoulder. Northlight's old workshop key. We had changed the exterior locks after moving to the new facility, but the key also opened the fenced loading area behind the original unit, where Bellwether still stored banquet chairs under an arrangement I had been trying to end for 6 months. The second key looked like Evelyn's car key. The third was silver, small and newly cut. My old house key had been silver. Evelyn returned with an empty platter. Coffee. No, thank you. Dessert is pear tart. I need to go. Camille made a helpless gesture. This is what you do. The second something feels uncomfortable, you leave and send an attorney. I sat through the pot roast. Brave. Camille, Paul said quietly. She looked at him. What? We've all been tiptoeing around her for almost a year. Nora didn't renew the account. Neither did I. That came from Reed. He said it so evenly that for half a second I wondered whether I had misread the message. Reed had a gift for placing doubt exactly where certainty had been. I unlocked my phone and opened the notice. Bellwether House, LLC, has accepted the 12-month credit facility renewal. Below it was the timestamp. 7:42 p.m. Reed had been seated at the table at 7:42, nodding while Camille told me I owed them my life. I held out the screen. What do you call this? He barely glanced at it. Acceptance of the facility, like I said. And the Northlight guarantee? Existing support documents remain on file. That isn't the same as renewing them. Did Harlow tell you that? Our rep said nothing had to be resubmitted. That isn't what I asked. His mouth tightened. It was such a familiar little movement that the dining room seemed to fold in on itself. Suddenly, I could smell dust and chafing fuel from the last anniversary dinner Evelyn had hosted at our house. I could see my drafting table shoved against the garage wall and brass foil scattered beneath a folding table. I had come home from a 3-day installation in Richmond and found 42 Mercer relatives, friends, and Bellwether clients in my living room. Evelyn had wanted a more intimate setting than the venue. Reed had said yes. My office became the coat room. My flat files became a bar. A caterer used my lead knives to open packaging because they were right there. Someone cracked the cobalt bowl while moving it off the entry table, then placed both pieces inside my desk drawer. Reed found me in the garage beside my stacked records. "Mom was under pressure," he said. I remembered staring at him, waiting for the rest of the sentence. It never came. Now he was giving me the same look across the table. Patient, disappointed, already preparing to explain why the thing he had done was less important than my reaction. I put my phone in my bag and stood. "Nora," Evelyn said, "sit down and have dessert. Reed can call Harlow tomorrow." "I already have a meeting with Harlow tomorrow." Reed's chair shifted. "About what?" There it was, the first honest thing his face had done all night. A loose end. "What time? Why?" "Because it's Bellwether's account. It's Northlight's guarantee. We should all be in the room." "No, it's a meeting between me and Dana Cho." Camille's expression sharpened. She knew Dana. Everyone who had ever asked Harlow for more time knew Dana. "What did you schedule?" she asked. "Coffee," I said. "Maybe a muffin." "Nora, you told me this was a closing dinner. I'm closing something." Reed rose. "Let's talk outside." "I'm already on my way there." He followed me through the foyer. Evelyn called after him to let me go, which guaranteed he wouldn't. My coat hung beside the front door. Reed reached it first and held it open, waiting for me to put my arms through. The gesture was so absurdly married that I almost laughed. I took the coat from him. "You're making this bigger than it is," he said under his breath. "You renewed a credit facility attached to my company. I kept a supplier from walking out before our busiest quarter. You had 8 months to replace me." "I had 8 months of lenders asking why the guarantor was withdrawing." "Maybe tell them the guarantor divorced you." "This isn't personal." "Of course it is." He glanced toward the dining room, lowered his voice further. "Do you think I enjoy needing Northlight on those forms?" "I think you stopped noticing." His face changed then, hurt or a convincing relative of it. "You walked away with the company," he said. "I never asked for a piece of it. You didn't own a piece. I supported you while you built it, and I supported Bellwether. That was the agreement. It wasn't a transaction to me." Behind him, the cobalt bowl reflected a warped stripe of candlelight. "Then why does your family keep sending me invoices for it?" I stepped around him and reached into the bowl. The brass workshop key was warm from the room. The small silver key beneath it had crisp edges, its grooves bright where a cutting machine had bitten into the metal. I held it up. "What does this open?" Reed's eyes flicked toward the kitchen. That was answer enough. I set the key in his palm and closed his fingers around it. Outside, the evening air smelled like wet leaves and chimney smoke. I had parked on the street because Evelyn's circular driveway was packed with Mercer cars, each arranged so someone else had to ask permission to leave. My phone rang before I reached the curb. Dana Cho. I answered beside the passenger door. "I was planning to see you at 9. "I know," Dana said. Office sounds clicked behind her. Keys, a printer, the low whir of machinery that never cared what time families ate dinner. "That's why I'm calling." I looked back at the house. Reed stood behind the glass storm door watching me. Dana took a breath. "Nora, did Northlight authorize Bellwether to place another $187,000 under the renewed facility?" My hand tightened around the phone. "No." "Then tomorrow's meeting just got more complicated. How much has actually been funded?" 46,000 and change, Dana said. The rest is committed against approved purchase orders. So stop it. I flagged the account. I can prevent new draws tonight. Reversing approved orders is different. Different how? Different in the way that requires documents instead of a phone call. Reed opened the storm door. "I'll see you at 9, I told Dana and hung up. He stepped onto the porch without a coat. Was that Harlow? I opened my car door. "Nora, you ordered $187,000. His expression didn't change fast enough. "Refrigeration and climate panels," he said. "They're revenue equipment, not champagne fountains. You knew the amount without asking. Because I run Bellwether. With my credit. With Bellwether's credit. Backed by Northlight. Temporarily." I laughed once. It sounded ugly in the cold. He came down the steps. "Those improvements pay for themselves by spring. We can book the conservatory year-round, and the new kitchen lets us bring catering in-house. Once the numbers reflect that, I refinance and your name comes off. You said the same thing about the courtyard heaters. They increased winter bookings. You bought 14. You needed 8. Because the pricing broke at 12. That is not how needing things works." He stopped at the edge of the driveway, barefoot in leather loafers, his breath pale between us. For a moment he looked less like the man who had cornered me financially, and more like the man who used to come outside in January to scrape ice off my windshield. He had always been willing to be uncomfortable for 5 minutes. Anything longer required a committee. "I didn't have a choice," he said. "You had 8 months of choices. If I'd told you, you would have said no. Yes, that's why." The porch light caught a few silver threads at his temple. Those were new, or maybe I hadn't been close enough to notice them. Behind the dining room window, Camille stood with one hand holding the curtain aside. Evelyn was a shadow over her shoulder. "Tomorrow," Reed said, "please don't do anything permanent before you understand what it does to everyone." I got into the car. "You mean before I understand what it does to you?" "No, I mean Lena, the kitchen staff, the event contractors, Camille and Paul, Mom." He could still list the people I would worry about in the right order. Then he closed my door gently, as if that counted. Dana's office had 4 glass walls and no privacy until she touched a control that turned them cloudy. At 9 the next morning, the walls went from transparent to milk white while I set my folder on her conference table. She wore a dark green suit and running shoes. Dana kept heels beneath her desk for lender photographs and mediation sessions. Everything else, she once told me, could survive sensible footwear. "I pulled the original file," she said. The folder in front of her was thick enough to injure someone. Mine held the divorce agreement, Northlight's corporate authorization, and the letter my attorney had sent Reed on the 91st day. I had spent half the night reading each one until the language stopped sounding like English. Dana slid a page toward me. "This is the continuing commercial guarantee Northlight executed 4 years ago. My attorney has a copy. Then your attorney has already told you the bad part. The divorce agreement binds Reed, not Harlow. Correct. And this remains active until Northlight revokes it in writing. Correct. I'm revoking it in writing." She rested one hand on the thick folder. "For future extensions, renewals, and new advances after Harlow receives notice. It won't eliminate obligations already accepted under the facility." I took out the letter I had signed at 6 that morning. Dana read it without touching it. "If I accept that today, Bellwether loses access to any unused portion of the line," she said. "Their pending orders will be reviewed individually. Anything Harlow has already committed to fund remains covered." How did Reed place those orders without confirming the guarantee? He didn't need to confirm it. The facility renewed through Bellwether's portal. The existing support documents rolled forward under the terms. He knew that. I can't tell you what he knew. He used the old guarantee because it saved him from applying for a new one. That is a reasonable inference. Dana was careful with words for a living. Hearing her call something a reasonable inference felt like watching a judge reach for a gavel. I pushed the revocation letter across the table. She left it between us. Before I take this, I need you to understand the immediate effect. Reed gave me that speech in a driveway. Reed isn't responsible for Northlight's payroll. That stopped me. Dana opened a spreadsheet on her tablet and turned it around. Bellwether's payment history filled the screen. Several cells glowed yellow. 2 were red. The account has been cured each time, she said, usually within 5 business days. But their cash position is tight, and these orders increase the monthly obligation substantially. How substantially? She showed me. I did the calculation twice because the first answer felt impolite. They can't carry that. They project increased booking revenue. Projected by whom? Bellwether. Of course. If Northlight revokes today, they'll have to cover deposits and any unapproved balances with cash. Their vendors may revise terms. Harlow may require additional reporting. And if I don't? Your exposure continues. There it was, no clever escape. Just 2 companies tied together by a signature I had given when Reed and I still shared passwords, keys, and a belief in the same future. I thought of the 14 people at Northlight who would arrive by 8. Marco would complain about the shop coffee, drink 2 cups, then recalibrate the cutting table with the tenderness of a surgeon. Tessa would leave a sticky note on my monitor reminding me that the new lift lease expired Friday. Their jobs were attached to the same balance sheet Reed had treated like a family pantry. "Take the letter," I said. Dana watched me for another second, then signed and dated a receipt. The sound of her pen on paper was almost nothing. By 10:15, Reed had called 6 times. At 10:20, Camille called the Northlight office and asked Tessa whether I was emotionally available. Tessa put her on hold and came into my office wearing an expression usually reserved for damaged freight. "Your former sister-in-law would like to know if you are emotionally available." "Tell her my emotions are in a meeting." "With whom?" "Other emotions." Tessa nodded solemnly. "Should I offer voicemail?" "Please." That earned me 30 seconds of relief. Then Reed appeared in the lobby. He walked past the display panels and scale models as though he still knew where he was going. He used to visit twice a week. After the separation, I moved my office from the open mezzanine to a room with a door, partly because I had always wanted quiet and partly because the door locked. Tessa intercepted him. "I need 5 minutes," he said. "Nora's emotions are in a meeting." He stared at her. "She'll understand," Tessa added. I opened my door. 5. He entered and placed both palms on my desk. "You froze the line. I revoked Northlight's guarantee. You froze the line. Harlow froze it because Bellwether can't support its own orders. They canceled the climate panel deposit. They're reviewing it. The vendor released our production slot. Then call another vendor. We chose them because they can deliver before October. You chose them because I was paying." His jaw flexed. "You haven't paid a cent. That's what a guarantee is, Reed. A promise that I will. You did this without talking to me. The sheer symmetry of it left me quiet." He heard it a moment later. His shoulders dropped 1/2 an inch. "That's different," he said. 5 minutes are up. We lose the conservatory season if those panels don't arrive. You'll have to scale back. There are contracts. Then honor what you can afford." He straightened. "You think I'm reckless. I think you confuse finding money with making money. Bellwether supported this company when nobody knew who you were. Your mother let me store 3 crates behind her loading dock for 4 months. I have thanked her every Christmas for 11 years. Tom Arlen gave you Calder. Tom put my bid in a pile. I won Calder because I found 12,000 square feet of matching amber glass after their original supplier quit. You met him at our table, and somehow I've been paying admission ever since." Reed glanced through the interior window at the shop floor. Marco and 2 installers were guiding a restored transom onto a padded rack. Reed knew what that contract was worth. He knew our margins, our insurance renewals, which months I slept badly. "Mom will cover the panel deposit," he said. "With what?" "She has investments. Then she can guarantee Bellwether. She shouldn't have to jeopardize her retirement when Northlight already has the paperwork in place. There it was, smooth and unembarrassed. I stood. Leave. Nora. Your 5 minutes became 7. His face hardened. If Bellwether starts calling vendors to explain why Northlight withdrew support, people will ask questions. Is that a threat? It's the reality. Our names have been connected for years. My work can survive your mother's disappointment. Can it survive lenders thinking you abandoned commitments halfway through projects? I walked around the desk and opened the door. Tessa looked up from her monitor. Reed lowered his voice. I'm trying to keep this contained. You renewed the account during a dinner where your sister was telling me I owed you everything. I didn't plan Camille's speech. You just nodded to the rhythm. He stepped into the lobby. You always do that. Do what? Find one sentence that makes you feel finished. He left before I could answer, which meant his sentence got to be the last one. By Friday, the Calder Grand Hotel postponed its lobby restoration. Their facilities director, a man who had once approved a 6-figure change order while standing inside a service elevator, suddenly needed additional comfort around supplier continuity. He used the phrase twice in 4 minutes. I asked if someone had contacted him. We hear things, he said. The postponement moved 3 months of projected revenue out of the quarter. On the same afternoon, Tessa reminded me that our equipment proposal expired at 5. The new water jet table would let us cut laminated glass in-house instead of sending it to Ohio. I had negotiated the price for 6 months. I stared at the unsigned lease until the numbers blurred, then called the vendor and let it go. Afterward, I went into the break room and found Marco attacking the coffee machine with the handle of a spoon. You have to encourage it, he said. You're denting it. It responds to authority. The machine coughed out half a cup. Marco handed it to me. You look like you lost a fight with a spreadsheet. I postponed the water jet. He set the spoon down. How long? I don't know. He studied me, but didn't ask the question he had earned the right to ask. Instead, he opened the cabinet, found the cinnamon Tessa kept for oatmeal, and shook some into my coffee. Now it's artisanal, he said. I laughed despite myself. The relief lasted until I returned to my office and saw the brass key on my desk. It had been placed in the center of a white envelope, the old Northlight workshop key, the one from Evelyn's cobalt bowl. Inside, the envelope was a note in Evelyn's narrow handwriting. Since access is suddenly so important to you. Below it, she had added, Bellwether's chairs will be removed by month's end. I turned the key over. A strip of masking tape clung to the back, softened with age. In my own handwriting were the words, Loading Gate. The gate opened onto the shared alley behind our original workshop. Bellwether's chairs occupied 2 storage bays they had used rent-free since before the conservatory project. Removing them should have been exactly what I wanted. At 4:30, a truck from Mercer Event Services blocked the alley behind Northlight's current shop. They had brought the chairs to me, 48 stacks of them. The driver handed Marco a delivery sheet stating that Northlight had accepted custody under the original storage arrangement. My old signature appeared at the bottom, copied from a 4-year-old equipment receipt. Marco called me before unloading. By then, the truck had blocked a stone delivery, 2 installers were waiting to leave, and the driver's dispatcher was charging by the minute. I called Evelyn. You asked us to remove them, she said, from the old loading bays, not deliver them here. The agreement says Northlight storage. The agreement expired. Then send them back. The driver says you closed the Bellwether dock for resurfacing, a project we scheduled before your financial interference. You're using my shop as a pressure point. I'm solving a logistics problem. That is what family used to do for each other. I looked through the rear window. Marco stood in the alley with his hands on his hips while the stone supplier leaned on his horn. Come get them. When the dock reopens. Evelyn, Nora, every boundary you draw creates work for someone else. She hung up. It cost me $800 to redirect the chairs to a commercial storage unit. It cost another $600 to reschedule the stone delivery. By the time the alley cleared, half the shop knew enough to worry and too little to stop. At 6, Tessa went home. Marco pretended to reorganize packing blankets until I ordered him out. Rain began ticking against the high windows. I was locking the front door when a woman stepped from a gray sedan at the curb. Lena Ortiz had managed Bellwether's operations for 7 years. She usually looked composed enough to seat 200 guests during a power outage. That evening, her hair was damp, her blouse was untucked beneath her coat, and she carried a black accordion folder against her chest. "I need to show you something," she said. "Did Evelyn send you?" If Evelyn knew I was here, she'd change every lock before I got back. I looked at the folder. "What is it?" "The reason Reed needed your guarantee renewed before anyone could ask where the money went. Come inside." Lena followed me through the dark lobby. I turned off the security alarm before it finished its warning chirp and led her to the conference room, where the only clean surface was a 6-foot table covered in tile samples. She moved the samples to a credenza, one careful stack at a time. "You can push them," I said. "I've seen what those cost. That's how I know you work in events." She put the accordion folder on the table but kept one hand on it. "Before I open this, I need to know what you're trying to do." "Go home before midnight." "To Bellwether. I'm trying to stop guaranteeing it. Even if that closes it?" "Reed asked me the same question with more employees in it. Then he was manipulating you." "Yes, he was also right." I pulled out a chair. "Sit down, Lena." She sat but didn't remove her coat. Rainwater gathered beneath her shoes. "Bellwether won't close because I stopped lending it my name," I said. "It'll close if the business can't support itself. That distinction won't matter much to the people cleaning out their lockers. You think I don't know that? I think Reed knows you know that." Lena finally released the folder. The first section held vendor aging reports. Bellwether had bills more than 60 days overdue with its linen service, produce supplier, HVAC contractor, and temporary staffing agency. The second held event deposit records. Money had come in steadily. It had also gone out steadily, just somewhere else. I traced a line with my finger. "What's Mercer Facilities?" "An internal account Reed uses for property work. Bellwether paid it $82,000 over 5 months. For what? Courtyard heaters, drainage, the loading dock, design work for the conservatory expansion." "The resurfacing Evelyn claimed was already scheduled?" Lena gave me a tired look. "The dock is open. It was open when they loaded those chairs." Of course it was. I turned another page. Deposits from autumn events had covered spring vendor balances. New deposits had covered payroll. Reed's proposed solution was the expanded conservatory and in-house kitchen, both funded through Harlow. He's building more capacity because the capacity he already has loses money, I said. He thinks volume fixes the margin. It makes the hole wider. I know. Does Camille? Camille sees booking totals. She doesn't see cash disbursements. Evelyn. She sees whatever Reed prints for Monday meetings. The last section contained 3 versions of the same projection. The first showed Bellwether barely breaking even by March. The second assumed full conservatory bookings at rates 20% higher than their current packages. The third removed several overdue balances entirely. Which one went to Harlow? The optimistic one. Which one did you prepare? The first. Did Reed change it? He said I was forecasting fear instead of growth. That sounded like him. Reed believed language could shame numbers into behaving. I leaned back. Why bring this to me? Because he renewed a facility large enough to keep the doors open and make the problem worse. Because Evelyn thinks an investor is coming. Because Camille thinks the deposits are sitting in restricted accounts, waiting to pay event costs. And because you want me to leave the guarantee in place. Lena looked at the rain streaking the windows. I want you to make a decision with the actual numbers. That's a diplomatic answer. I've spent 7 years placing divorced couples at separate tables without either one realizing they lost. Diplomacy is a reflex. I almost smiled. She slid the folder toward me. I also want Reed to stop using your fear of hurting us as working capital." The directness of that made the room quieter. "Do these leave Bellwether?" I asked. They already did. I lifted the top page. I printed them at the office. That's what I mean. No, these are copies. The originals are in the system. I understood. She wasn't giving me stolen documents or a secret weapon. She was giving me records I could have demanded as guarantor, records Reed had counted on me being too polite to demand. "I'll scan them and return the folder tonight. Tomorrow morning is fine." "Will you still have a job tomorrow morning?" "That depends on whether Evelyn checks the rear camera." "She has cameras?" 14, only 9 work." "Which one covers your parking spot?" Lena's mouth twitched. "One of the enthusiastic 5. After she left, I scanned until the machine heated the room. Each page made the same small mechanical sigh as it passed through. At 11:30, I found the line that explained the timing. Harlow's renewal option had expired at 8, the night of dinner. Reed had accepted it 18 minutes before the deadline. Camille agreed to meet me at a diner near the interstate because, as she put it, "I'm not walking into your office like I'm being deposed." She arrived 10 minutes late wearing sunglasses in cloudy weather. She kept them on until the server asked whether she wanted coffee. "Tea," Camille said. The server glanced at the laminated menu. "We have coffee." "Coffee's fine. I had brought 4 pages, not the whole file." Camille looked at the first and pushed it back. "I don't handle accounts payable." "You handle bookings." "Yes. Those deposits aren't where you think they are. They're business funds. They move. They're paying old debt before current events happen. That's normal to a point. You're past the point." She removed her sunglasses. I gave her the projections. She compared the versions side by side, lips moving slightly as she read. On the optimistic version, her projected conservatory bookings were nearly double the number on her internal calendar. "I didn't give Reed this," she said. "What did you give him?" "Confirmed bookings plus tentative holds." He counted every hold as a signed contract. Some of these aren't even holds. They're inquiries. "Does Evelyn know?" Camille ignored the question. "Where did you get this? Does it matter?" "Yes." "Why?" "Because if Lena gave it to you, Mom will fire her." "Then maybe don't tell your mother." She sat back. "You always do that." Apparently, I have several signature behaviors. You throw out a sentence and make everyone else carry the consequences. Reed said something similar. Reed learned it from living with you. The server put down 2 mugs of coffee and a metal pitcher of cream. Camille stared into hers. "I believed him," she said. It was the first sentence she had spoken without a blade hidden in it. "He told me supplier balances were current. That was why I approved the new marketing campaign. We're offering winter conservatory packages right now." Without the panels. Without heat after 6 p.m.d. either. The old system trips if the kitchen runs both ovens. I poured cream into my coffee. It bloomed across the surface. "Why did you say I owed you everything?" Her shoulders went rigid again. "We're back to that? We never left." She turned the mug by its handle. "Because Mom spent the whole afternoon saying you were going to pull the guarantee and ruin us. Because Reed said you refused to discuss alternatives. Because every time your company wins something, people at Bellwether talk like we were lucky to know you. That bothers you?" "I built that booking operation. I changed the packages, the vendor lists, the referral program. Reed puts his name on every expansion. Mom tells people she preserved a family institution, and I'm the one answering emails at midnight when the refrigeration unit leaks." Her anger had found a different target, but it had not softened. "And then you leave the family," she said, "and somehow you get to be the only person who ever did any work." "I never said that." "You don't have to. You have awards." That was so painfully Camille that I laughed. She looked offended, then tired, then, against her will, amused. "I hate you sometimes," she said. "I know. You make it hard to enjoy." She drank her coffee and grimaced. This is terrible. The menu tried to warn you. Camille asked me for 48 hours. She wanted to compare the projections with the actual event calendar and outstanding contracts. I told her I would look at anything she brought me, but Northlight's revocation stayed in place. She accepted that with the sour dignity of someone signing for a package she hadn't ordered. 36 hours later, Bellwether's payroll deposits arrived late. By noon, Camille was locked out of the accounting system. She called me from the venue's supply closet. I knew it was the supply closet because Bellwether used the same hold music for every extension, and the instrumental version of At Last played faintly behind her whenever she stopped speaking. I asked Reed where payroll was, she said. He told Mom I was creating panic. Did everyone get paid? By 11. He moved money from the kitchen equipment deposit, which means that vendor won't get paid. He says Harlow will release the funds. Harlow won't. I told him that. And? Mom removed my access because financial management is outside my role. A box scraped near her phone. What are you doing? I asked. Sitting on cocktail napkins. Comfortable? They're linen. Camille had exported the booking calendar before confronting Reed. She sent it to me along with signed contracts, deposit schedules, cancellation terms, and a note that read, I am not joining your side. I am joining arithmetic. The records were worse than Lena's conservative projection. Several high-value dates had tentative holds counted twice. Reed had raised projected rates without updating signed packages. Even if every scheduled event went perfectly, Bellwether could not carry the new Harlow payment through winter. I sent the numbers to Dana. Evelyn arrived at Northlight the next morning carrying the silver key. She placed it on my desk between us. There, she said. No more keys. The grooves were bright and sharp. A faint blue marker line ran along one edge, the kind locksmiths used to mark a blank before cutting it. When was this made? It was in the bowl. That wasn't my question. Evelyn sat in the chair Reed had occupied days earlier. She wore camel wool and pearl earrings, dressed for the kind of conversation where she planned to be remembered as gracious. I should have returned it sooner, she said. How many copies? Nora. The locksmith charged $12. We are discussing nearly $200,000. We're discussing access to a house you no longer live in. My company paid for half that house until March, and Reed pays for it now. I slid the key back toward her. Keep it. Her composure slipped. I came here to offer a solution. A replacement guarantor? An investor. Gordon Pike is willing to cover Bellwether's short-term needs and help refinance after the winter season. I knew Gordon. He owned 3 catering companies and treated invoices like opening bids. What does he want? A share of future conservatory revenue and stability from existing partners, meaning Northlight, meaning you withdraw your revocation for 6 months. I leaned back. Gordon won't put in money while the primary guarantor is walking away, Evelyn said. He sees it as a vote of no confidence. He sees me as first loss. He sees a successful company honoring its commitments. My commitment was to the original conservatory construction. Your commitment was to Reed. The words settled between us. Evelyn touched the key with one polished fingernail. You think I never understood why you left. I did. Reed should have told you about the anniversary dinner. He should have stopped it. It mattered to me. So did my office. I thought there was room for both. There was. You took mine. Her face tightened, but her voice stayed level. Families use what they have. That's what people say when they mean mine. And this company sprang fully formed from your forehead? I paid back every dollar Reed put into Northlight. You cannot pay back belief. No, apparently it compounds forever. She stood. For a second, she looked older than she had at dinner, not weak. Evelyn would have considered weakness a scheduling failure, just tired and genuinely bewildered that love had ceased to grant her entry. If Bellwether fails, she said, Reed will never forgive you. He already spent that forgiveness. She left the key on my desk. I put it in a drawer instead of the trash. Some habits survived after their meaning didn't. Dana called at 5:23 that evening. Her voice had lost its usual patient neutrality. "Bellwether missed today's payment," she said. "Reed requested an extension based on incoming event revenue, but the booking records don't support it." I looked through the interior window. The shop lights shone across the restored transom, every amber pane held in place by new lead. What happens now? Harlow issues a formal default notice Monday morning. They'll have 5 business days to cure. And if they don't? Dana was quiet just long enough to make the answer feel physical. Then Northlight's guarantee comes due. "Send me the notice when it goes out." "Nora," Dana said, "you should speak to counsel before Monday." "I will. And start thinking about what you want if Northlight has to perform. What I want is for Bellwether to pay. I'm asking what you want if it doesn't." I looked at the silver key in my open desk drawer. "Send me everything." The default notice went out at 8:04 Monday morning. At 8:11, Reed called. At 8:14, Evelyn called. At 8:20, Paul texted, "I have been informed this is somehow my fault. Call if useful." Camille sent nothing. My attorney, Andrea Bell, read the guarantee twice in her conference room while I watched rain collect on the windows behind her. She had red-framed glasses, a yellow legal pad, and the unnerving habit of becoming quieter as problems became more expensive. "Harlow can demand the outstanding balance after the cure period," she said. "How much?" "The exact number changes with pending commitments. Dana's preliminary payoff is $192,418. I repeated the number because it seemed like something that should require permission to exist. "Northlight can cover it," I said. "Barely. We have reserves." "You have reserves earmarked for equipment, facility expansion, and operating stability. Paying this means postponing all 3. A slow quarter afterward could put pressure on payroll. What happens if I refuse?" Harlow pursues Northlight. "You could challenge portions of the renewed exposure, especially anything funded after your revocation. That takes time, and your lender will learn about the dispute. So will every hotel that asks for a credit reference." Andrea nodded. "There's another path. If Northlight pays, it acquires subrogation rights against Bellwether. Harlow can also assign its secured interest as part of the payoff. In English, you step into Harlow's position to the extent of what you paid. Bellwether's equipment, receivables, and certain conservatory fixtures secure the debt. I become their lender, their unhappy lender. Can I make them sell? You can enforce against the collateral. A sale of the whole operating business would still require their cooperation. And if they don't cooperate? Enforcement gets expensive. Equipment sold piece by piece brings less. Event contracts unravel. Everybody loses more slowly." Andrea turned the legal pad toward me. She had written 3 columns: pay, fight, negotiate. There was no column labeled walk away. "I thought revoking the guarantee was walking away," I said. "It stopped Reed from putting another dollar on it." "After he got there first." "Yes." I hated how cleanly she said it. The Mercers held what they called an emergency meeting at Bellwether that afternoon. I knew because Camille forwarded me the invitation with the note. I remain outside finance, yet finance would like me in conference room B at 3. At 3:20, Reed called from the meeting. "I'm putting you on speaker," he said. "No." A click answered me. Evelyn's voice came through next. "Nora, Gordon is prepared to proceed if you withdraw the revocation." Then Gordon isn't prepared to proceed. He needs assurance. He needs a cushion between his money and your losses. Reed cut in. "We can cure Friday's payment if Harlow releases the kitchen draw. Harlow won't lend you money to pay Harlow. It would let us finish the revenue-producing project. In a kitchen you can't afford to stock. This is why you should be here. I was told I was on speaker after you put me on speaker." Paul said, somewhere farther from the phone, "For what it's worth, that did feel like an unforced error." "Paul," Camille said. "What?" "I'm contributing." Evelyn spoke over them. If you leave the guarantee in place for 6 months, I will secure your exposure with my investment account. Gordon wouldn't accept that? A pause. He has concerns about liquidity, Evelyn said. Then so do I. Reed's chair scraped. You're refusing every solution that doesn't give you total control. I don't want control. I want out. You can't have both. Both what? Out of the family and untouched by what happens to it. The room on their end went silent. That was Reed at his best. He could take a boundary and find the cruelty-shaped shadow behind it. I know this will cost me, I said. That doesn't give you permission to choose how much. I hung up. On Wednesday, Bellwether transferred enough to cover half the missed payment. Evelyn sold investments to fund it, but the second half depended on event deposits due after the cure deadline. Harlow declined to extend. On Thursday, Reed came to my house. It was a rental townhouse with narrow stairs and a kitchen designed by someone who had never owned a skillet. Reed stood on the front step holding a banker's box. I left the chain on. What's in the box? Your things. I got my things in the divorce. Mom found more. He tipped the box so I could see a green glass paperweight, 2 Northlight binders, and the blue ceramic mug I used to keep beside the old kiln. The cobalt bowl wasn't there. You can leave it, I said. He lowered the box. Can I come in? No. His eyes moved to the chain. You think I'm going to force my way into your house? I think you're used to being invited past the first answer. He looked down the street. Harlow told us what happens if Northlight pays, he said. You'll own the debt. I'll be owed the debt. Same difference. It really isn't. You could take Bellwether apart. I could. He looked at me then, searching for pleasure and finding none. Is that what you want? I wanted you to replace the guarantee. I couldn't. You didn't try until I revoked it. You know what lenders see when they look at Bellwether. An old venue with seasonal revenue and a conservatory that eats maintenance. Northlight made the risk acceptable. So you knew. I knew taking your name off would kill the financing. And you signed anyway. His grip tightened under the box. I thought I had one more season. You always think you have one more season, because one good season changes the numbers. No, it delays the same conversation. He shifted the box against his hip. The old mug knocked lightly against a binder. We were married when you signed that guarantee. We were. I believed that meant something. It did. You believed I would absorb the risk because losing money frightened me less than disappointing you. His face went still. The words had hurt him. I could see that, and a small, exhausted part of me wanted to take them back just enough to make the evening manageable. That reflex had nearly cost Northlight $200,000. I never wanted to use you, he said. I believe you. He looked surprised. You wanted things to work, I said. You wanted Bellwether to grow, your mother to feel safe, Camille to stop questioning you, and me to stay capable enough that none of those wants competed. Using me was just the part you called temporary. He left the box on the porch. Friday passed without a cure. I signed Northlight's payment authorization at 4:37 p.m. For several seconds after Andrea sent it, neither of us spoke. The money left the account in one electronic movement. Years of careful margins, postponed bonuses, repaired machinery, and contracts completed through weekends became a confirmation number on her screen. I went into the restroom and threw up. Then I washed my face, returned to the conference room, and signed Harlow's assignment documents. Dana sent formal notice to Bellwether before close of business. The guarantee had come due. So had theirs. I gave the Mercers until noon Monday to choose between negotiating a controlled sale and enforcement against the collateral. They made me wait until 11:46. Bellwether's conservatory was empty when I arrived. Gray light spread across the glass panels Northlight had restored years earlier. One pane near the west doors still held a faint seed-shaped bubble. I used to point it out to Reed whenever we attended an event there. Proof, I told him, that handmade things kept evidence of heat. Evelyn sat at the long tasting table with Reed and Camille. Paul stood near the coffee station. Lena was absent. "Where's Lena?" I asked. "She violated confidentiality," Evelyn said. "You fired the person who knew how the building worked?" "She chose a side." Camille looked at the table. "She chose payroll. I placed the proposed sale terms in front of them. A regional venue company, Harbor Pine Hospitality, had reviewed the records over the weekend. Its offer would keep existing contracts, retain staff willing to stay, and continue operating through the season. The price would repay most of Northlight's claim after closing costs and priority obligations." Evelyn flipped to the last page. "They're changing the name." "Yes. They're stripping Bellwether from the property. They're buying a business, not your last name. This is my family's work. This is their offer." Reed didn't open his copy. "And if we say no, Andrea files to enforce Northlight's assigned security interest. You'll seize the refrigerators, the ovens, the equipment, receivables, and covered fixtures. The conservatory, certain components." He looked around the room at the glass walls. "You'd dismantle your own work? If that's the choice you make." Evelyn pushed the papers away. "You would destroy something beautiful to prove we should have respected you. I would sell collateral to recover a debt. Listen to yourself." "I have. For years." Camille opened the proposal. "Harbor Pine keeps the event team?" she asked. "If the sale closes cleanly?" "And current contracts?" "Yes. Lena." I gave them her number. Hiring is their decision. Evelyn stared at her. "You cannot be considering this." "I'm considering the 42 events on the calendar." "You're considering your job." "I work here, Mom. That has always been the part you call selfish." Reed stood and walked to the conservatory doors. He put one hand against the frame Northlight had installed during the original renovation. "What if I sign a repayment plan?" he asked. "With what revenue?" "We cut the expansion. Sell the courtyard equipment. Gordon takes a smaller position. And Northlight remains tied to you for how long?" 3 years. "No." He turned. "You haven't even seen terms." "I've seen yours." His hand fell from the frame. Evelyn looked at Camille. "This requires a family vote." "Then vote," Camille said. "You know what this place means." "Yes, that's why I'd rather sell it whole than watch Nora's attorney label the ovens." Paul made a faint sound that might have been a laugh. Camille shot him a look. "Bad timing," he said. It took 3 hours. Evelyn demanded a licensing agreement for the Bellwether name. Harbor Pine declined. Reed wanted a consulting role. They declined that too. Camille asked for written consideration for the existing event staff and got interviews guaranteed, which was as far as the buyer would go. At last, Evelyn signed. She used the same narrow, forceful handwriting from the note she had sent with the chairs. Reed signed after her. He pressed so hard the pen tore the paper. Camille signed last. The sale took 7 weeks to close. Bellwether House became Juniper Hall. The old gold letters came down one at a time, leaving pale outlines on the brick until winter rain erased them. Harbor Pine hired Camille as events director and Lena as operations director. Most of the staff stayed. Evelyn kept enough from the sale to remain comfortable, though she never again controlled a room by deciding who sat where. Reed left before the transition ended. I heard he had taken a position managing procurement for a hotel group 2 cities away, a job where every purchase required someone else's approval. Northlight recovered all but $31,000. The loss hurt. The water jet table waited another year. I had to explain the reserve reduction to my managers and accept the look Marco gave me before he said, "Next time you marry a venue, get separate checking." I'm not marrying another building. That's what they all say. 8 months after the sale, Northlight moved into a larger workshop with a loading yard no one else used for free. On the first morning, I found a box outside my office. Paul had dropped it off before work. Inside was the cobalt bowl, wrapped in one of Evelyn's linen napkins. The thin brass seam still ran through the blue glass where I had repaired it years ago. A folded note from Camille said only, "This was always yours." I carried it to the lobby and set it beside the new front door. Then I took the key from my pocket and placed it in the bowl. One key, cut for me alone.